I got chills. Hey, my name is Dan Shimolinski. People like to call me Chimy, and you can too. I am a bassist, sound designer, and composer living in Los Angeles, and today, it's going down. We are back with some more hybrid cinema magic. This is Downers and Falls. And I know I am one for hyperbole, and I say that there is always a large amount of source material in every Soundpaint library, but this is a dense one. We are talking 2 years of production time for this library. Trolls told me that some of these single samples took up to a day to make. A day. Not parts, single samples in a part. One single depression of the key, one whole day's worth of work, and it shows. No stone was left unturned here. This has all the goodies that you need for the perfect cinematic downer and fall. We have picture-perfect falls in pitch, filtering, resonance, volume, speed, length. There's just so much here, and we gotta dive into it because we have a limited amount of time and an unlimited amount of possibilities. Now, in downers and falls, you get 20 parts. 20 parts, and they are all very different from one another. I don't think the best utilization of our time together is going to be to go through each and every part and play each key straight down. We would be here for a while. So what I'm going to do is just give you kind of a general sampler platter of each of these parts, give you a general description of what I think each part is good for, and just pick some random keys so you get the feel for it. Downers and Falls really puts the hybrid in hybrid cinema. We are dealing with synth sounds, Foley, slams, orchestral sounds, acoustic drums. There's so much in here. Let's start with this first one just called Down Bends, and this is kind of the most general, all-encompassing part for me. You're going to hear kind of a spinning down effect, which to me is kind of just lowering the speed of an LFO to either volume or filtering, and you're just going to gather that this is very synth derived for the most part, but there are some acoustic sounds in here as well. A lot of thought and attention put into the textures. Listen to how layered these sounds are. You will gather how these sometimes took up to a day to make. So a huge variety there of source material, processing techniques. What is the down aspect? Is it pitch? Is it speed? Is it both lengths? There's a lot in there, but they all have the bend down aspect in common. Then let's head over to Boomer, which probably has the most in common with, say, hits and booms, except the tails of all of these incorporate some kind of a drop aspect at the end. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I really hope you're listening with good headphones or good speakers with this one because the stereo imaging stuff is just super, super fun. Here's Boomer. Huge drop-offs at the end. I love that kind of sputtering out effect. That is super, super fun. Very cool. This next one's called Doppler, as in the Doppler effect. When you have an object passing you by that's making noise, the pitch appears to drop as it gets further away from you. Somebody clearly went to a lot of racetracks to get some awesome car sounds here, which I love. But, you know, if you start thinking about this stuff from a morphing perspective, maybe using these sounds as envelopes for other sounds, there's some really, really interesting stuff here. So whether it's a race car or a space helicopter, I think that last one was, something is definitely moving from left to right, giving you that Doppler effect. Then, you know I love me some simple descriptors in Soundpaint. We've got downer fast, downer rising, downer smash. So downer fast is just kind of quick drop-offs. You'll notice that the arc is the main thing that differs between all these parts, you know, how you would literally draw out the shape of the waveform. For example, rising to me kind of looks like a football. In all of these rising downers, there's a long kind of almost equal amount of lead up into a climax and then a downer fall at the end. See what I mean by football shape? Smash is just kind of a large, shrapnel-y, largely textured, Foley kind of focused sound that has a downer effect at the end. Very cool. Downer is kind of the simplest and the cleanest to me. There's not a ton of processing, not a ton of layers, not a lot of Foley stuff. It's just a very clean mixed bag of downers. So maybe some less layers, but still a lot of processing and grit, but a huge variety of sounds. I kind of loop these two parts here in with that, long and short. These are that simpler kind of mindset, but more tailored to length. So I'll show you some long ones really quick. So yeah, not a ton of layers, but definitely like super fine-tuned reverbs and EQs, and short is just the same kind of vibe, but shorter. Pretty cool. Then I'm going to pop back up to these two drum fall layers, drum long and drum short. These have to be from acoustic sources, maybe taiko drums or large toms. They're very cool. These long ones are actually quite long. So since you can't do much with pitch with drums, the taper at the end is definitely from volume, but that's almost certainly some kind of acoustic source, right? And then short sounds like the same kind of timbre, but just shorter. Sweet. And then these are possibly my favorite orchestral falls. They actually did orchestral sessions for this specific library. These long ones are kind of trilly, big, deep, cinematic, string sustains, maybe some brass stuff as well. My people, my bass is on those deep, open, low Cs. I remember getting an extension in high school on my bass to play Brahms 1, and the magic of the low C on the upright bass is something that I will never get over. Aren't those magic? And short falls are similar, but shorter in length. And when I say length, I hope you don't realize I don't mean necessarily the length of the sample, but the length of the arc. The climax and fall off happens faster, even if the sample itself is pretty long. And then slams are kind of a hybrid sound between maybe a large hit, almost as if it's existing within the resonance of an orchestral sample with strings, or like if you were to play this stuff into the body of a piano. They're very cool. Hear the string squeal there? Flutes. So slams with a bit of an acoustic flair. And we gotta check out these Starfalls. These are Troll's favorite, I believe. They are magic. The imagery I want you to have for these parts are shooting stars, fireworks, flares, comets, anything cosmic or kind of upper harmonic, rich, vibrant sources of lights that are slowly fading off. You're gonna hear a lot of filter resonance motion, pitch envelope motion, super awesome stuff here. Poetic is the most shaped to me, the most multi-layer, as if you saw maybe a group of stars. Not much more to say than just these are beautiful. Yeah. Regular, I gather these are a little rougher than Poetic, maybe a little more distortion, a little more processing, but they're just a little more straight ahead. So maybe a little more processed, a little rougher, harsher, right? Singles to me focuses on a single star, like a single pitch. There's maybe not as many layers to this one. Kind of follows the arc of one individual pitch. So obviously, a lot of this stuff is applicable in the cinema world, but you could totally use this stuff as a transition in any modern electronic music production. Then we've got some synth-specific stuff, long and short once again. A lot of this stuff sounds like prophet-y kind of brass to me. It's really, really nice. Love that. And then short. Pretty sweet. And then finally, tonal downers, which kind of reminds me of tonal boomers in the sense that it is extremely, extremely distorted and gruff and gritty. There's a lot of analog character in here, but all with a downward taper. These are heavy metal. You get the picture. So yeah, that's a very fast walkthrough of the parts that you get in downers and falls. Let's head over to the program section where with a very dense library, you get a very dense amount of programs. How many, you might ask? I believe there are 60 here. I had the pleasure of designing some of these, so we'll go through some of mine, some that aren't mine. Let's start with this one called Are You Ready? Are you? Awesome. So grabbing some tonal parts here, utilizing one note stretch, and then we have a one note same on a downer over here. What does the one note same sound like? Like a plane flyby. I didn't even hear that. That's the magic of Soundpaint, is sometimes you just sneak little things in to kind of give you some interesting stereo motion, and then you just build all this other stuff on it. We got a smash here. Very cool. And then we bring in these two guys, which give us the pitch. Going through an analog distortion, was playing with the cutoff of this filter here on the mod wheel. Very nice. This is one of mine. It's called Bit Crushed. I actually got the inspiration for this from this very first part because I felt like it was already processed through a bit brush. Check it out. Right? So I wanted to kind of build on that. I threw in a downer here and have a very, very fast square LFO to the volume to kind of give it that bit brushy modulation, and then threw in another third part here, through an actual bit brush, through a delay. And I'm a huge fan of assigning the mod wheel to the sample rate or the bit depth of the bit brush. Gives you very cool formant tones if you want to move it while you're having your downer. Yeah, this one's called Don't Do It. I got chills. Tarek, man, that is a beautiful, beautiful program. Holy cow. So really utilizing the orchestral stuff here definitely shows some of the beauty that you can get out of this library. There's a lot of awesome programs here by Trolls. If you see TF after kind of just the standard name of the part, that's a main part, which typically has an EQ, an Alexi reverb, just really fine tuning these parts to show them in their best light. So that's what's happening here with boomer, fast, rising, smashes, all that stuff. Here's one of mine called L to R, or left to right. I've got some LFO trickery happening here. These parts have such great stereo motion as it is. I tried to accentuate that even a little bit more. You'll notice I've got a ramp LFO to the pan of part 3 and part 2. You do kind of have to time this. Part 1 had enough left to right motion as it was, and then also that same LFO to the general stereo image of the whole mix. So this is left to right. And then my LFO brings up some other fun stuff happening here on the EQ. Check this out. I've got a little bit of emotion, just kind of milking that low region to kind of give some low resonance, some low sub action, but it gets more exaggerated when you bring up the mod wheel. In addition to some other stuff, the tone comes up here on this downer, so the sound changes quite a bit. Here's mod wheel up. And here's mod wheel down. I love that sub LFO. It's kind of like that slowing down, like whoa, whoa, whoa sound that you get from a lot of modern cinema scores. Here's one of mine called Meteor. Really focused a lot on sounds that had texture that made it sound like a bunch of metal smashing into stuff. Lots of textural attention put on these parts. Nice. So you'll notice I actually left the slams layer on just default. I think any of those sound good, so kind of interesting to have that variety with some samples that I've chosen up here. These are both one-note sames, and we've got some panning action happening when you raise up the mod wheel, and some other goodies in the matrix. This one's called Movin' Boomer, and you're gonna notice what's moving pretty quickly as I raise my mod wheel. Oh yeah. I love to make the EQ bands dance. That's a really fun way to get just interesting resonances and interesting characteristics to the sound. Also brings up some distortion and the amount of both LFOs. And also we have an LFO going to the panning of part 2. So I'll show you what it sounds like when the mod wheel's down, and then I'll raise it up with this fun stuff. Let's make the harmonics dance. I love it. All these little motions, little kind of exaggerations, tone controls, tone manipulation stuff, that's your sauce. That's what's gonna make this stuff really come alive. Here's another pretty one. This is also by Tarek. This is No More Lies. That's beautiful. Just gorgeous. Here's another one of mine. This is called Phasers Down, and it's actually the first program that I make when I started to really get into downers, and I was kind of envisioning a space shuttle either landing or crashing, and the phasers or whatever's using to, propel it through space winding down. And, so many of these sounds kind of have that effect. I thought, let me pick a couple of my favorites, 4 to be exact, and really kind of make that ultimate phasers winding down sound. I don't even remember what I did with the matrix here. Oh, okay, cool. So we've got an LFO going to the pan, 2 different LFOs, some stereo image rotation, and then the frequency of LFO 1. So here's what that looks like. When you have an LFO going to the frequency of another LFO, that's how you can control kind of speed ramps like this. It's a ramp LFO. It's kind of winding down the stereo image with all of the winding down that's happening within the samples. And I had kind of a shorter ramp to kind of give it a little bit of aftershock even after the ramp down. Moving along with tonal stuff, here's one I created called Snarl bass. A lot of this stuff does come from synths, and I am a very big fan of those. So I tried to create kind of a snarly, gritty synth bass sound out of my parts that I've chosen here. Remember that I assigned the mod wheel to the volume of part 3, which is currently all the way down, but that's going to give us a slam if we want it. Yeah. And finally, this is called Velocity Thunder. Those drum sounds to me, drum long falls, kind of sound like thunder already. I tried to accentuate that with using just velocity. So what I have going here is velocity assigned to the gain of the compressor. So that's just going to be general overall volume. Also the tone, I've talked a lot about how I like using the tone control on the compressor to give me just a really nice, tasteful, neutral light to dark. A band on EQ, the cutoff, and CC1 brings up the overall tone of part 1. So the lighter I hit the key, the further away and more ominous the thunder should be, and the harder I hit it, it should be more present. So whether you want some distant thunder or a very present rainstorm, you've got it here. So now I would love to dive back into these parts so we can explore them more and create a program from scratch. Now, my general approach when I'm just exploring is to find a sound that I really resonate with, something that I really like, and then build something off of that. These sounds are so inspirational just on their own from key to key that you can really just let a random push of a key dictate where you want your sound to go. So let's try that. I'm gonna open kind of the most all-encompassing one, just down bends here, and see what we land on. Maybe I'll do a 1-note same. That's okay. I like G4. G4 gives us a little bit of the orchestral vibe. Doesn't that sound like cellos right in the beginning? Right? And then that kind of sputtering, slowing down effect. All right, cool. So let's do something tonal. Let's move up to 1-note stretch. And then you know me, I gotta tune it. Let's actually go up an octave. Just. Very cool. So with tonal, my next impression is to go to the orchestral stuff just because there's so much beautiful meat in there. When I'm auditioning parts, I always turn off the one that I've selected and then move over to part 2 to kind of see what I can find. And a PSA, make sure that you move your mouse to the part that you want to change, because if it's selected over here, you'll notice that if I turn it off or on, it automatically selects that part. I have many a time done that and then gone here thinking I was on this layer and lost the sound that I chose here. So just be careful about that. That's just a quick little friendly PSA. So let's check out these orchestral long falls and see if we can find something that we like. These are all incredible, but I like this one so much. I think I'm gonna go with that. What is that key? Is that the same key? G4. Wow, I could have theoretically chosen these two libraries and then picked a random key, and it would have been the same for both. But yeah, I like that one because it's got a pretty distinct front start of the attack. The speed of the trills kind of go down, so that's going to complement really nicely with part 1, I think. Nice. So part 2 keeps going a little bit further than part 1. We can do 2 things about that. One thing that I wanted to mention earlier and I forgot is with the non-tonal stuff, you can absolutely pitch it up or down to kind of fit your timing, right? Just a quick example of that. So if I just pull up maybe like down or fast, that's pitched. That's less pitched. Okay, so let's say I really like the timbre of that downer, but it needs to be shorter. You can bring up the pitch, which will also affect the time. So you can really, in that sense, turn maybe a long downer into a faster downer or a fast downer into a very fast downer just by raising the pitch. You know, with non-tonal stuff, I find that it doesn't really matter as much, and it's a great way to kind of fine-tune the timing of things. But since these two are both tonal, we're gonna have to use some envelopes here to really tailor this guy down. I would really like to have the second part fade out before the first part so that I can really focus on the tail of the first part. I want that to be the focus point. So I'm gonna go ahead and just grab an envelope here and say part 2. And I think that was about 10 seconds. Let's see what happens if I have a decay to nothing after 10 seconds. Oh yeah, that makes way for our first part, right? We can even bring up the volume just a little bit. Bring up our releases. Nice. Now I want kind of a tight subby hit here, and yes, we could go through this library and find the subbiest, cleanest hit. But you know, I really think there is value in having all the hybrid cinema stuff, so I'm just gonna go to where I know this stuff lives, right over here in sub hits, which I've covered before. It's kind of perfect for what I'm hearing in my ear, and you know, just to get the spirit of Soundpaint in making music faster, let's go over to sub hits and see if we can find something that complements this. I want to give kind of a, almost like a big bass drum, but a little more synthy or a little more produced to start my hit. And we're going to pop over to sub hits. Let's just do sub hits ET and find something nice and clean. Done. See, that's just, it's like, it's that easy. So, you know, I really encourage you all to pick up all of this hybrid cinema stuff, because they do kind of have their specialties, and it's just good to be able to say, okay, I need this very quickly, I need this sub-hit sound, let me pop over to sub-hits, rather than having to dig through downers or dig through, Soundpaint does such a good job of giving you a wide variety of sounds with everything. You'll get a few hits. There's definitely some overlap, but I think in terms of going to the library that specializes in what you need, it's super valuable to have them all. So I one note samed that hit that I like. I'm gonna fine tune it a little bit. I want it to be slightly lower, so I'm gonna bring the pitch down. Nice. Maybe a little dark. So let's hear how part 3 sounds with our other parts thus far. Oh yeah, that is awesome. So now I think I'm gonna try and grab one of these Starfalls. Wouldn't it be cool if we were to have some kind of upper harmonic soaring things above our hit? Maybe assign the volume to the mod wheel so we can choose when we want it, but let's find something that's gonna really complement this kind of low, fluffy underbelly that we've just created in Starfall's Poetic. That's a little too harsh. A little too cosmic. I like that one because it's windy. Does that make sense? I kind of gathered that what we're creating here is like the camera peering over the mountain for the first time, looking at the ruins of like a very elaborate, ancient village that once was. That's kind of the vibes. And so this is like the magic-y kind of desert wind. I like that. So I'm going to go ahead and one note same that. Maybe pitch it down a touch. Hear what it sounds like. No, I don't want to cover up the magic of it. It's so good. But what I will do is I will assign that volume to our mod wheel. Nice. That's going to work really well. Give it a little bit of a release. And then I kind of want to give some other control to that mod wheel. One thing I am a big fan of, as I've mentioned earlier, is using this tone control on the compressor. This is my weird obsession because I like what it does. It's not quite the resonance effect that you would get from, say, the tone knob on a part. It's got a little bit of a natural resonance. I'm not sure which filter algorithm the tone control is using, but if you don't want that, this is a really simple way to get it. Yes, you could grab, say, one of the bands of an EQ, you could pull up a filter and drop the resonance to nothing, but this is just a really nice neutral way to get some tone control. So I'm gonna add CC to that to give us some dark, light control over that. Not much, maybe like 25%. And while we're at it, let's just make it crescendo as well. Maybe like 3 dB. And I want to bring up the volume of the orchestral layer because I want to hear almost like an orchestral crescendo as well. So really have that stick out there. I don't think 3 to 12 dB is going to be too much. I might regret saying that, but because it's a ba and it goes down, I feel like what we'll be bringing up is a low part in the volume. So let's see if that works. So here's our matrix currently. And then in terms of reverb, it might be nice to bring in some magic from the shimmer, but I don't want it to be too reverb-y. I almost want it to be entirely pitch mix, if that makes sense. So the way to do that is just kind of bring your time down considerably. Pitch mix at 100%, bring your size down. We do not need that much, if any, modulation happening. Let's just see where that gets us. Yeah, so that gives us the shimmery pitch mix sound without the reverb. And then the reverb that I think works best with this stuff is actually the digital one. I really like dark EMT on this. It's a really nice timbre and I think kind of plays really nicely into the modern cinema sound. Yeah, and maybe we'll pull the mix just a little bit more, bring up the time, and have the dampening be a little bit lower. Ooh. like that. Are we done? We might be done. Let's check this out. We got some real magic in there. I completely forgot to check what it was going to be like to have the orchestral crescendo bring in the Starfall, but it works brilliantly. So when the mod wheel's all the way up, you get those kind of stars emerging in the sky. So yeah, that is a relatively brief look at a very complex, dense library. This stuff is just magic to me. I mean, all of this stuff, you know, you can really tell there was so much time put into every aspect of every key. As I said, would sometimes take a day for just one single sample, and I believe it. These are the kind of sounds that like you don't necessarily know you need until you hear them, and then you're like, oh, I need that in my arsenal. I need that in my sound design toolkit. We didn't even really look at how you can morph some of this stuff with other stuff to kind of almost act as an envelope for other sounds. You know, anything with motion, anything with pitch motion, volume motion, filter motion in specific can encompass another sound. So, you know, the possibilities are truly endless with this one. And I hope that was evident from this demo. Really hope you enjoyed the sounds. Thanks so much for taking a journey with me, as always. See you next time. This is Chimy, signing out. Take care.